Yeah, President Trump is once again vowing new tariffs, this time saying he'll...
The profound impact of the Trump administration's tomato tariff on Mexico. The Trump administration's decision to impose a 17% duty on fresh tomatoes from Mexico, which became effective on July 14th, has ignited a trade dispute with far-reaching consequences. Welcome viewers to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. This protectionist measure, a cornerstone of the administration's America First trade policy, was justified by the U.S. Commerce Department as a necessary action to shield American producers from what it alleged were unfairly low-priced Mexican imports. The tariff effectively terminated the Tomato Suspension Agreement, a long-standing accord that had for decades allowed for duty-free trade of tomatoes in exchange for Mexican exporters adhering to minimum price requirements. The termination of this agreement has been hailed by some U.S. growers, particularly in Florida, who claim they have been crushed by an influx of cheap Mexican produce. However, this action ignores a crucial market dynamic. The majority of American tomato production is destined for processing into products like sauces and ketchup, not for the fresh, high-quality, vine-ripened tomatoes that Mexico specializes in and which are a staple for American consumers. Consequently, many experts are questioning the U.S.'s ability to replace the sheer volume and quality of fresh tomatoes it receives from its southern neighbor without significant market disruption and a sharp increase in prices for consumers at the grocery store. The immediate consequences of this tariff are already being felt in a profound way across the Mexican agricultural sector. A prime example is Veggie Prime, a major grower and exporter operating in the central state of Querétaro. Despite its substantial investments in state-of-the-art, high-tech greenhouses and a long-term contractual obligation to its Canadian distributor, Mastronardi Produce, the company was forced to absorb the full 17% tariff in the first week, a direct and immediate hit to its bottom line and a major challenge to its financial stability. In the second week, a slight reprieve came when Mastronardi agreed to a 10% price increase, but this still left Veggie Prime with a significant portion of the new cost to bear, eroding its profitability. Moises Atri, the company's export director, has expressed a mix of hope and anxiety, hoping that the tariff's full cost will eventually be passed on to U.S. retail clients, but acknowledging that this outcome is far from guaranteed. This situation perfectly illustrates how a single tariff on one product can destabilize an entire sector, forcing companies to make difficult financial decisions and threatening their long-term viability. The substantial investment in technology and infrastructure required for their high-tech greenhouses, which are designed for efficient, large-scale production, makes any immediate change to their business model extremely difficult and costly. Economic and social fallout in Mexico. The economic repercussions of the tariff are projected to be severe and widespread, with potential consequences extending well beyond the agricultural sector. Experts from the consulting firm Grupo Consultor de Mercados Agrícolas estimate that the tariff could cause a 5% to 10% drop in tomato exports, which are valued at over $3 billion last year. This projected decline in exports, which amounted to more than 2 billion tons, could lead to a catastrophic loss of as many as 200,000 jobs in an industry that currently supports roughly 500,000 people. This potential job loss represents a massive blow to the Mexican economy and would have a devastating impact on the livelihoods of thousands of families who depend on the tomato industry for their income. The Mexican Association of Tomato Producers, which represents a significant portion of the industry, has voiced alarm over the potential for such a widespread social and economic crisis, warning of the domino effect it could have on rural communities. The tariff's effects are not confined to large-scale exporters. They're also impacting the domestic market in Mexico. In a climate of fear and uncertainty, the price of tomatoes within the country has already dropped by more than 10%. This is due to concerns that a glut of unsold tomatoes, previously destined for the lucrative U.S. market, will flood the local market, driving down prices for everyone. Small producers, who often operate on razor-thin margins and have fewer resources to weather such a storm, are particularly vulnerable to these price fluctuations and are already feeling the pinch. Their ability to survive this period of uncertainty is a major concern for the Mexican government, as their failure could lead to broader social instability in rural areas. Mexico's response and future outlook. In an effort to mitigate the damage and find a path forward, the Mexican government is exploring alternative strategies. Mexican Agriculture Secretary Julio Berdeg has floated the idea of seeking out new, more stable international markets, such as Japan. However, this proposal has been met with significant skepticism from producers like Atri, who point out that the high cost of air freight would make such a venture economically unfeasible for a perishable product like tomatoes. In a more practical move, some companies are already diversifying their operations to reduce their dependence on the U.S. market. For instance, Veggie Prime is starting to experiment with growing peppers to see if they can serve as a viable and profitable alternative crop. The political response from Mexico has also been swift. President Claudia Sheinbaum has announced that her administration will survey tomato growers to understand their needs and determine what support is required, with a special focus on helping small producers who are most at risk. All parties involved are now looking toward a scheduled review of the measure in 2 months. This timing is critical, as it coincides with the U.S. fall season, when domestic fresh tomato production naturally begins to decline, making the U.S. market more reliant on imports. This review may offer a chance to negotiate a more favorable outcome and provide some much-needed stability for the Mexican tomato industry. The ongoing situation underscores the precariousness of global trade relationships and the significant challenges that protectionist policies can pose to critical economic sectors, with impacts that extend far beyond the border and into the lives of producers and consumers alike.